Hey everybody, and welcome back to a scenario playthrough video as we continue our series. This is part number 2 of Katie's World, or RCT Lightwater Valley. We are building ourselves a Togo stand-up coaster to start this video. If you guessed that correct, then well done. This one, we've kind of gone for more older style coasters, only because I feel like the park that we're putting this in probably wouldn't really be in the market for some of the larger, newer stuff. So we're going to go with this instead. And we're going to go for kind of a standard Togo stand-up layout. Although I realize right here that we don't have the helix pieces that we have in RCT2, which is kind of throwing a wrench in my plans a little bit. So we're going to have to get slightly creative on this helix element here. Weirdly, the original game didn't have the B&M stand-up coasters. It was just the Togo stand-up, which we did end up getting the B&Ms a little bit later on in RCT2. But this is the stand-up that we've got to work with, so we're going to make the most of it. I actually like these coasters in real life. They got kind of a bad rap because the ones in the US and North America in general were not very good, like Shockwave, King's Dominion, and all of that. But the ones in Japan are fantastic for some reason. So I like these, and I think they're a lot of fun. And I almost thought about doing a completely different kind of layout, like Fujin Raijin that was at Expo Land, that unfortunately had an accident. But I decided to go with this kind of a standard layout because it feels like, again, something that this park would do is buy either like a second-hand ride from somebody or buy this as kind of an offhand type attraction that they would get from a catalog. So we've got our layout here more or less done, and now we run into an issue here where we have our entrance and our exit on either side of the station, which is typical, is a kind of a rule for me. But the entrance, or the exit, I guess, can't go anywhere here because the coaster is in the way. So have to get a little bit of creativity going on here with our pathway and also our coaster layout here, just to get the thing out of the way of this path in a way that looks halfway decent. I was looking at two different kind of sides of this hill, like a shorter approach and a longer drop, but at this size hill it just doesn't really look very good. So we're going to typically avoid that by a little bit here. And I would have thought that was close, but unfortunately it still doesn't quite work out, and we've got to clear one more height worth of it. So I'm just going to go ahead and build in the pathway there so that we know what we're working with, and I'll go ahead and build the entrance while we're at it as well. It's unfortunate that RCT doesn't have little features like Parkitect where you can rotate that hut and build a path off of the side of the thing. You can do that, of course, in OpenRCT with the control panel or the console, I guess. And of course, you could have done that years ago with cheats as well. But since we're playing the vanilla game, we don't have that option here as much. So that's going to be our solution there, is go straight for a little bit, have a little bit of a dip, and then we'll have that hill with our little bit of trick track there at the end. We added in that bonus block break there, so it's going to clear out of that brake run a little sooner and clear that next coaster to start, or coaster train to start going through its thing. But we don't need 3 trains, this is just a 2-train coaster, so we're going to leave it at that and be all set. We're going to also paint it totally white, just because a lot of the coasters in Japan are totally white as well, so we're going to use that as a little bit of an homage to those, or homage. Now we're going to go ahead and boost our park rating a little further with the launched freefall tower here. This park, as you recall, is a 150,000 by end of year 3 park value goal. So we do need some kind of rides just like this to give ourselves a little bit of a boost to work with. So decently tall, and I'll typically go with the drop tower rather than the shot tower, just because I don't have to mess with it and reset it. I did like this little terraced garden thing on the way in. I thought that looked kind of nice, and then we've got those little miniature trees on the other side as well to just give it a nice little plaza type area there. Kind of feels like the one at Valley Fair to me a little bit. I'm not entirely sure why. So go back through, change our prices a little bit, because we're at that point now where nobody's going to pay that amount for some of these older, more dull attractions, I suppose. So we did call the stand-up coaster Astro Comet, as was used for a lot of those early ones. So I wanted to do a little bit here because we've got this kind of weird cut through with this pathway where it kind of goes underneath of the whole thing, and I kind of like how it goes underneath of the loop there. If I was doing custom supports, that would be a much bigger issue because I'd have to work around the pathway, but it is a cool viewing area there, and we're going to make a little plaza here on the hillside, and then kind of this little dip down, and also smooth out that exit pathway just a little bit. Do a bit of fencing here just to make sure that everybody's staying here inside the ride restricted area, or outside the ride restricted area, I guess. We don't want them inside. I am going to rename Storm to the Ultimate at this point too, just because I feel like it's necessary, since this is very obviously based off of the Lightwater Valley Park. So now we've got ourselves a fairly viable park here with 3 new coasters and 3 existing coasters. So 6 coasters in total feels pretty alright at this point. I think that's a decent start. Going to go through and add in a little bit more landscaping here just to dress it up a little bit now. I don't really think we need to be going through and doing too much. I also, just from a visual purposes standpoint, got rid of all the weeds just by clicking on the whole map with the land tile open, or the land mover open. It's free and it's easy, and I don't think it's cheating in my opinion, because it doesn't really do anything to your park rating. It just looks nicer. So we are going to go ahead and change up the trains here. So we're going to give it a one color train, or 2 different color trains, so a red one and a blue one. We're also going to buy a little bit of land here for our future adjustment. I could buy the whole thing in the middle there and stick another coaster in, but I kind of like the idea of the Ultimate kind of going out into the wilderness and coming back, because the real one really has that feel. If you've never seen a POV of the real one, you need to check it out. I will post a video in the description of the video, so you can go take a look at what the Ultimate was, because it really was incredible. At this point, somebody on stream redeemed the make guests sick command, so of course we did that through the cheat panel, and it's just a little bit of streaming fun, which is fine. Just I don't have to clean up with it, and it doesn't wreck the park rating too much, but we'll have to do a little bit of repair of some damaged things, since all the guests are going to be a little bit upset with that much puke on the ground, as I probably would be too, I guess. And we're going to dress up our park entrance a little bit there as well, with a different type of path and a fountain and some other little topiaries and things, just to clean it up a little bit and kind of make it look nice. Also with this little row of trees there in a nice little line. So at this point, we are going to go through and do our very last coaster, which is going to be a Vekoma Junior Shuttle. So this is kind of our only custom design thing in the park that wasn't already pre-existing, and I kind of feel like this is an appropriate next step for the park if they are sort of on a little bit of a downswing, or don't generally have the ability to buy some of these larger rides, but these are relatively cheap and they're super popular right now, so this feels like it will be maybe the newest thing in the park. So we're going to build it right down the center here with sort of an interesting little twisty curvy layout. So we'll start it here right on the side up by the go-karts, and it can exit it down there very nicely. And we'll take a look at the thing as it goes around the layout, and it does make it, but it feels a little bit slow, so I want to add one more piece here, but I've taller than the support limit goes, so we're going to raise this up just a little bit, and in order to make this look slightly less weird, we're going to buy some land, and we're going to do a little bit of landscape modification. Now it still does end up weird because it's sort of the only interestingly formed land thing down that way, but it's on the back side of the hill. Nobody's really going to be looking at it. If we spent more time on the map, of course we could have roughed up kind of the rest of the landscaping and made it look nice, but we're gonna skip out on that. So I looked at some green color schemes initially, and I like the green on a coaster in real life, but in general in the game, I feel like it just blends really well with the trees and with the landscape underneath, even if you're using the dirt and grass texture. So it doesn't necessarily hit as well for me as it might otherwise do. We are going to build this sort of weird queue up on some stilts here just because there's not really a suitable place to build it, so we're going to mess with the land slightly to reduce the amount of supports that we've got to look at for this thing. Just try and ease it in a little bit to the overall landscape. And again, this becomes sort of the only heavily modified landscape area here, which is okay. I think that's all right. Once we screen this with a little bit of trees and a little bit of those bushes and things like that, we can make it work all right. Those hedges there that are the conifer hedges rather than the brighter green regular hedge fence pieces, I always kind of like using in dense landscaping because they can really blend in fairly well and just make the stuff look thicker. So it's a good option too if you ever want a really thick forest to kind of just dump a couple of those in there, and it'll help out a little bit. Got ourselves a balloon stall, so we'll go ahead and get some balloons here for our victory condition, which isn't too far away. Adding a little bit of detail there to the go-kart track. And also a little bit more just fencing and other little details. Again, fencing is really one of the few things you can do with these maps to really give them some character outside of the kind of predefined couple of themes that we really haven't unlocked yet. So now we're going to do our first modification of the existing coaster here. So this one is based off of a Schwarzkopf Wildcat in real life. That was at one point in a big building inside the back of Lightwater Valley. It wasn't underground, but same idea, I guess, since buildings didn't really exist in RCT1 anyways. So we're going to try and build a sort of similar layout. If you watched the most recent Fix My Coaster layout series, we did one of these, and I'm pretty happy with the way that it came out. Of course, that was also using the mini coaster and also some other bits and pieces that really helped us get around an otherwise sort of awkward layout. So we can't do quite the same thing here, so we're going to make our best attempt at it with what we can do in RCT1. The biggest challenge is at -30, I'm as far down as I can go, and I'm outside of the park boundary, so I can't actually raise the land on the top of the thing. So I've got a minimum bottom and a maximum top that I can really work with here. So we are somewhat limited in what we can do with this whole thing. So unfortunately, that's going to lead us to have to be a little bit non-standard with this. Ideally, I'd want all these turns to be stacked on top of each other really nicely and have some good helix bits and everything, but we have some clearance issues, and it's just a little bit of a struggle to get the thing to line up just right. Like ideally that section here at this first turnaround is going to have a big helix, but we can't quite do that and get it to line up for whatever reason, so we're going to do a little bit of adjustment here to modify the thing. And one of the ways that we keep modifying this is pushing out the starting turn, so going further and further out. And I actually didn't know where the limits are here because for whatever reason I can't see the limits of the work or the construction rights area, so I don't quite know what we've got to work with here. So I just kind of kept bumping it out a little bit here and there until it fit. So thankfully I didn't hit an edge on that side of things, and we still have the top and bottom issues to deal with, but just trying to iterate a little bit here until we can finally figure out how to get that helix in, and it sits back further than we really want it to, but that's okay. We can deal with that. So now we just gotta finish this thing out, and again, ideally I'd want another full helix here that fits very nicely and then rolls into the brakes, but it didn't quite work out that way. But I think we still have the general vibe of the thing going on properly. One of the things we are going to be doing here is killing the capacity for this ride, because we've got a whole bunch of these little individual things that rockets, I suppose, that are right now just kind of running without any kind of block sections. But of course, wanting to go more realistic, we are going to put in some block sections here, and we're going to use a two-car train, which is fine. It's not your standard Schwarzkopf thing, but it does kind of fit what a Pinfari Galaxy type model might be. Some of those went up to 3 cars per train. So these rocket cars are fairly large, actually, so they take up a little bit of space, but we're going to just go ahead and go to the 2. It's going to help us actually with the pacing on the ride too, since we don't have the benefit of the edit ride stats plugin to get these things to operate a little bit better. We're going to make the whole thing dark, so it's generally invisible once we're underground, and hopefully if you're in a big box or whatever, you wouldn't see it super well. We're going to give it some Egyptian theming because we unlocked that for some reason, and now it at least has a little bit of character compared to the haunted house and the car ride on either side of it. So now we're going to get into adjusting the Ultimate a little bit. And the thing is, the Ultimate is, from a practical purpose, is kind of a terrible ride because it's got these ridiculously high laterals, kind of a stupid layout, and all of that. But the thing is, it's iconic, and I really don't want to get into doing a whole lot to the thing that's going to take away from the initial look of the whole ride. So we're going to modify it in a way that's going to help make it a little smoother, just in general, by adding some diagonals in here. And we're also going to do a little bit of height modification because the thing hauls through the layout right now, and the real one did too, but it almost reached the station on fumes by the end of it. But we're going to do this right here and drop off a 20 something foot height difference here and take off one of those steep sections there, and it's still going to finish with exactly the right amount of speed that we need, and it's going to lower some of the issues that we have with stats and things like that too. So we're going to also lower this first hill too because it's just such a short run to the first thing. Obviously the game had to compress this whole park, and the coaster especially, to fit within the grounds that they've already got figured here. The real one goes way off into the distance and then comes around and comes all the way back. So instead we're going to shorten up that front lift hill, which still gives us plenty of speed that we got all the way to that second lift hill. And now we can go ahead and do a little bit of work here to this middle section there that we had the diagonals in, which I think adds a little bit of smoothness to it. I don't really want to mess with the tunnel section just because it does have that nice iconic feel to the thing, and I'm okay with that. It's not too bad of a look. And then we do want to get this kind of final bit of turn here with a diagonal section as well, just to clean it up a little bit, make it look nice, and well, final dip there into the brakes. We don't need a load and unload station. There's no real reason that a park of this size would need that kind of capacity on this type of a ride. So we're going to go ahead and finish it up with just that single station and 2 trains. We're not going to use a 3rd train, although we could if we really wanted to. Reworking our entrance and our exit now. We are all set with that. And now we've unlocked the Roman theming, so I figure this feels kind of like it's a fairly substantial type ride, so we're going to give this a Roman type theme here at the back. Could rename it Gladiator or something, but the Ultimate sounds kind of cool still. So we will give ourselves a little food and bathroom section here in the back. We'll give this sort of a little palazzo type feel with this fountain and a fence. Continue that fence along here to screen that as well. And I wanted to get rid of those trees that I placed earlier only because they block the view of this ride from the train, and I feel like that would be a better look to be able to, look down across the whole thing and check it out. And then last I'm going to put this little plaza here in to really reinforce that Roman theme. We don't have a lot of pieces to work with, and we can't zero clearance anything, so we're going to take what we can get, and there we go. Winning the scenario here with plenty of space to spare. So there's our park. So now let's hop over into the real-time portion, and let's take a look at this park in full. And here we are. This is the completed Katie's World Park with all of our additions made. I think this is the most coasters we've put into a map thus far. They're all meant to be coasters that are on the kind of cheaper side or could be picked up secondhand, with the exception of this Vekoma shuttle here, the Junior Boomerang. But let's take a look at everything. So we redid our entrance here just to give it a little more of an inviting feel with the flowers and the fountain and everything, different kind of path type. Got our shuttle loop right here, and I was glad to have the length to do so with a more realistic thing. So high, medium, low, which is about what we would expect for this kind of a thing. And we were able to reuse the station for the train, of which is redone. Here we are. So I think this one turned out pretty nicely, and we did go down to the single train in the end because this layout isn't long enough to really justify a second one. The tunnels are on the longer side, but on the plus side we got rid of the ups and downs in any large portion. Sure, there's some little bits pieces here and there, but in general it's more level, which I think looks better overall. We got our little pond here still intact with the carousel nearby, a couple other flat rides. our spinning coaster here, which is maybe going to be the only one of these we're going to do in the scenario series, just because the pieces just don't have flexibility. There's just not much you can do with this to do anything unique with it and still kind of be realistic. So highs down the board here on the ratings, which, you know, fine. But I think it did alright with achieving the look of the standard Reverchon model there. Of course, our Togo stand-up here, with the lack of the helix pieces, we were definitely having a little bit of trouble here. But in general, I think it works okay, and it fits alright. So another highs down the board on this one, which is probably what we would figure. These stand-up coasters always tend to run on the higher end with the intensity and everything. But we got another inversion there. It would have been cool to have a coaster that had different inversions other than a loop, since we already have the Schwarzkopf, but, you know, so be it. I think this is okay in what we have here. So on the other side here we have that car ride we added, the single rail suspended was existing, and then of course we have our junior family Boomerang right here. And I think this layout turned out pretty nicely. We have the typical signature double bump here on the return spike. Got a little bit of room at the end for it, which is kind of what you want. You don't want the thing creeping right up against it, just because it doesn't look good when you do. And then we're going to have it come on back here. A little bit of landscaping around there, which turned out okay. I like these terrace gardens still on top of this drop tower. The flume is kind of on the back side here. I think I'd probably redo this a little bit with the viewing area and everything, given a second opportunity. But in general, I think the layout looks pretty nice. It's on the longer side. We could have probably made it even longer, to be honest. You know, long flumes aren't totally out of the ordinary, especially older ones, so I think it could be fine if we wanted to do that. In this corner was kind of the first area that we really built out with this car ride, and then that haunted house on top. And then in here, which we ended up renaming to Tomb Blaster, we have our coaster here, and I will make it a different color just so that it's somewhat obvious to see what's going on with it. The ratings here, medium, high, medium, which is about right. Unfortunately, we had some clearance issues with the overall height. I would have liked to have gotten, you know, 1 or 2 taller, so then we could have done a proper Schwarzkopf Wildcat model, but in the end, it kind of is what it is, and it's close enough, and I'm relatively happy with it. And then the 2 trains, not as realistic for the Schwarzkopf, but still fits the overall vibe of this kind of a layout. And then finally, we have Ultimate, which we did rename from Storm, and if we look at this, we're high, very high, medium, and I don't remember what the original one was, but I'm guessing we brought it down ever so slightly because we reduced the overall top speed, and we made it a little less rough in some places with a little bit of diagonal help there and everything. So just to look at this one again, we've got that first lift hill, straight section there, and then a couple of these like little hills before we get up here to the second lift hill, and I think that's slightly more realistic. We did chop off a bit of that height on the overall on that side, and then this section here we chopped off one full steep piece of track, which I think was the right move. It didn't need to be any taller than it was. We're already going with such good speed on the whole thing. So I left most of this intact because I really wanted to preserve the original look. Certainly it's a very RCT take on the thing, but we did add these little bits like these diagonals right there to give it a little bit more flow than we might otherwise have had as it starts to rain. And then it ducks underneath the log flume there with that kind of last turn and that little dip there at the end. So not too bad, and we gave it a little tiny Roman overlay, not exactly heavily themed by any means, but still something. And then the little Egyptian theme here on this guy, so using those 2 themes we got for it. So that's our park. I think it turned out pretty well, and before we end today, we're going to go over to some before and after little clips, as was requested in one of the YouTube comments, so I think this could be a little fun thing to add to the end to see where we were and where we came to. So, hopefully you enjoyed this one. If you did, consider subscribing so you can get all of the updates for the rest of the scenarios that we're going to play through. Next up is Dinky Park, so definitely come check that one out because we've got a lot of stuff to fit in a very small space. So until next time, thank you all very much for watching. Have a great day. Bye now.